2004 through 2013 Range Rover Sport AC condenser and radiator replacement. I'm Brian Eslick from How to Automotive. I'm going to walk you step by step through the process of changing out the AC condenser and radiator. So the first step is to remove the freon from the system. If you don't have an AC machine or access to a machine, I recommend you take it to a shop and have them remove it for you. I wanted to share with you the part numbers for the radiator and the AC condenser. I will provide links for the parts and the tools that I'm using in this video. Those will be in the description. Now that the freon has been removed, the next step is to pop the grill out here. So at the top of the grill here, these little tabs. So you're going to squeeze these little tabs like this, and you're going to pull the grill back. So there's going to be a couple on the right and a couple on the left. Squeeze the little tabs and pull them back. Once you got them pulled back, then you can reach down here at the bottom of the grill and pull straight out towards you. And there's a little clip inside there that's holding it on. So you're going to pull here, go on the opposite side and pull, and then the grill will pop out and you can set it aside for now. So when I originally brought this vehicle in, we were just going to replace the AC condenser. But as you'll see, when we start taking this apart, you'll notice the radiator is not in good shape. So we gave the customer a call and upsold the radiator too. So now I got the vehicle up in the air. I'm removing the lower skid plates. I'm just following around the perimeter of the skid plates, removing the bolts. And we're going to drop the front and rear skid plate down. Now that we got those two skid plates removed, we're going to go on the sides here and we're going to remove the two side plates or covers. So there's just held on some clips. You're going to pop these clips out. It's going to be the same on the driver's side and the passenger side. So just remove these clips and you're going to pop these two side covers off. Now on the passenger side of the radiator, right here is a petcock that we can open up and get the coolant draining. Or if you can do what I like to do is remove the lower radiator hose. It's much quicker. So I'm going to pop the lower radiator hose off here and squeeze the clamp, pull the hose off, and get the coolant draining. So while the coolant's draining, I like to go back up top and I'm going to remove the vent line here from the overflow bottle and follow the hose over and remove it from the top of the radiator. Once you got the hose disconnected from the reservoir bottle and the radiator, you can just flip it out up and out of your way like this. Now we're going to remove the fan shroud cover. You're just going to grab right here on the fan shroud and pull upwards like this on the corners. So you go on both sides and you'll pull upwards and it'll pop loose. There's little clips at the bottom of the fan shroud and then you can pull it out like this. And if there's anything attached to it, go ahead and pop it off. Now you can go ahead and put that aside. Now you need to disconnect the electrical connector here that goes to the fan here. So we're going to pull this out of its little bracket and unplug it. To get the fan clutch unbolted, you need to have a special tool. So you need a kind of what they call a spanner wrench. So this wrench hooks on the bolts on the water pump pulley. So you'll hook it like this with the ear facing that way, and then you'll hook it onto the bolts down there. Then you'll take a 36mm wrench like this, and then you'll put it on the fan clutch. The wrench one you'll rotate clockwise. The fan clutch, the spanner you'll rotate counterclockwise. This is actually reverse threads on these. So I'm going to pull this clockwise and push the spanner wrench counterclockwise, and that'll loosen up the fan. Then you can spin it off, and now you can pull the whole fan assembly out like this. Now that the fan shroud and fan clutch is removed, we can go ahead and remove this upper hose. Just squeeze the clamp and pull the hose off the radiator. I know what I like to do is I like to just bend it over and kind of tuck it under the air snorkel here, and that'll hold it out of the way for us. Now we're going to work on getting the lower fan shroud out. So there's a little tab just under the radiator neck there. You're going to flare, so it looks like this. You're going to flare the tab and then pull the radiator fan shroud upwards. So there's a tab on both sides. Just flare it and then you can pull it up like this. Now we can work this out of the vehicle. Now that you got the fan shroud completely out, on the driver's side here, we're going to work on getting the cooler lines disconnected. So there's going to be two of them, one up top and one just a little bit below it. We're going to remove the clamps and pull these hoses off. These are the power steering cooler hoses. So after that, we're going to get the AC condenser lines here removed. So there's a couple 10mm bolts. We're going to pop these off. And then there's one 8mm screw right underneath holding the line to the radiator. We're going to unbolt that. So once you get all this disconnected, you're just going to push it off to the side out of your way. So just take your time disconnecting everything and then push it off to the side. So now I'm going to work on separating the radiator from the condenser. So there's a couple screws in the front right here. You're going to remove here. And then on the opposite side, there will be another screw. Just like it, you'll remove those two screws. And after that, we're going to pull the radiator mounting pins here out. To get those pins out, you use a flat blade screwdriver. And on the side of the radiator here, you push this little tab. So you push this tab in, and then with a pair of pliers you can grab here at the top of the pin, and you can pull this pin upwards, and this pin will slide out. And this is what's holding the radiator into the core support here. So you'll push the tab with the screwdriver and pull like this, and it's going to pop out. And this is what the little tab's going to look like. We're going to do the same thing for the driver side. So there's a little tab here on the side. Press it and pull the mounting pin out. Now that we've got the radiator mounting pins removed, down below here is a bolt that we're going to remove. So if you see it down there, we're going to remove that bolt there. And on the opposite side, it's a little harder to see, but right next to the coolant reservoir bottle is just below it. Down at the bottom, there's the bolt. We can remove that with a long extension like this. Those bolts are 10 millimeters. Now that we got those bolts removed, I went to go take the radiator out. You can normally do this with the condenser in it, but it was fighting me. So what I'm going to do is remove this plastic molding back here that's underneath here, and the way we remove that, we're just going to disconnect it from up top here. So you're going to squeeze some tabs. So we're going to come up here and we're going to squeeze these little tabs, and we're going to push the molding inwards towards the condenser. So you'll squeeze the tabs, push it in like this, and you're going to do that for both of them on the left and the right side here. So you'll squeeze these tabs and push it inwards. Now that'll give us a little bit of a slack on the radiator. And what we're going to end up having to do on this particular model is it's fighting me, it's snagging on everything. So I'm going to separate the condenser and the radiator from each other and pull the radiator out first. So I'm separating this molding here. So what I'm doing is essentially separating the condenser from the radiator, and I'm pushing the radiator in towards the engine block, and then the condenser will kind of stay underneath the core support. So once you get that, you can kind of lift the radiator up and pull it out of this little bracket down there below and push it inwards, and that'll give us a little bit more slack to work on. We're gonna try to get this condenser separated from it. Sometimes you can take them out with the condenser still attached to the radiator, but I always find that they fight me, so I separate them. To separate the condenser from the radiator, there's a couple screws here at the top we need to remove. We'll have to flare this little plastic piece off, or take this little plastic molding off here to get to a couple of the bolts. So you just kind of flare it back like this, and once you get it flared back, it'll pop out of its little clips. And then at the bottom here, there's a clip coming from the back side. It's a little difficult to get to, so the way I do that is take a screwdriver and I push the center portion of the clip inwards, and that'll pop it free, and then we can work this plastic molding out. This is what the clip's going to look like. So I'll just take a screwdriver and I'll push it right here on the end. It's kind of like this right here. I'll just push it like this, and it'll pop the clip out. So I'll push it, and then now the clip will pop out. Now you can pull this molding off, and then right behind it is a little 8mm screw. Now you can get to the screw on the driver side there. Once you do that, now we need to go back on the front side of the radiator, and if you look just underneath these hoses here, there's a 8mm screw that we need to remove. So we're going to remove that one right there, and then we're going on the opposite side of the radiator. It's going to be the same thing. So you're going to go, after removing this screw, you can go on the opposite side of the radiator, and if you look right down here next to the wire there, you can see the screw. We're going to remove that 8mm screw there. To get to those, I just used a deep 8mm socket and my little cordless ratchet here to remove those. Okay, now that we got those bolts, now the radiator and condenser has got some slack in it, and we move it towards the front of the vehicle. We need to get this cooler off right here. To do that, right here on the front side of the radiator, there's these little tabs you're going to squeeze. So you'll squeeze these little tabs inwards, and as you squeeze them in, you'll push it in towards the front of the vehicle like this, and it'll pop off like here. Now that you got the cooler disconnected on the passenger side, we need to get the driver side of the cooler lines disconnected, so they're mounted on the side of the radiator here. So what we have to do is just slide this towards the driver's side to pop it off the little clips right here. So you're going to pop the hoses out of these little clips. Now we can push the radiator and condenser inward as far as we can go towards the engine, after getting these hoses all disconnected from here. So everything is disconnected like this. So now we can push the radiator and condenser forward like this. I tried lifting it out with the condenser together, and it kept snagging on me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push this radiator as far forward as I can, and then I'm going to reach around back, and I'm going to pull the condenser out first. So I pushed it inward as far as I could, and now I'm going to reach down here and pull the condenser up, and work it out. It was snagging on everything, and so I didn't want to damage anything, so I decided to pull it out like this. It's a tight fit with the radiator and the little mounting ears down at the bottom of the radiator. When you go to pull it out, you have to kind of angle this radiator at different angles. So you have to arc it at different angles and kind of work it left and right, like work the driver's side up an inch or two, and then go back over to the passenger side and work it up an inch or two. And you have to push some of the hoses and lines out of your way. They're going to catch here. It takes a little bit of kind of finessing it to get it to come out of the car. So when I was lifting the radiator up, it kept snagging on the coolant reservoir bottle. So I'm just going to unbolt it and push it off to the side. I'm going to leave all the hoses and everything connected to it. Just unbolt the couple bolts holding it down, lift it up a little bit, push it off to the side, and that'll give me the clearance I need to get the radiator out of the vehicle. So the coolant reservoir just has a couple bolts down below, a couple 10mm bolts down below right here. So you're going to unbolt those, and now you're able to just kind of push it over maybe a half inch or so to the towards the fender, and that gives you a little bit more room to flex these hoses and lines out of the way to clear the radiator, because it snags on everything as you're coming out with this thing. So once you get that all cleared, you can lift the radiator out, and now you can see this particular radiator was plugged up with leaves and debris, and the fins were in really bad shape. So I went ahead and upsold this customer. We're going to put this radiator in along with the condenser. So when you get your radiator out, you may have a bunch of leaves and debris down here on the core support. Go ahead and blow that out with some compressed air and clean that out. Now we're going to take the radiator here and we're going to prep it. So we need to take all the hardware and stuff and switch over anything that doesn't come with the new radiator. So we're going to switch it over from the old radiator to the new radiator, such as this little molding here on the bottom. We'll switch that over, put it onto the new radiator, and we'll mount all the hardware that comes with it. So on mine, there's a little bracket here that I need to transfer over to the new radiator from the old radiator. I need to take the rubber grommets here and mount them into the new radiator. So just take your time, lay the two radiators side by side, and then swap over the parts that don't come with the new radiator, which are going to be these little plastic moldings here. These moldings are designed to direct airflow inside the into the radiator and condenser, so they're very important to put them back on or transfer them over to your new radiator. So transfer all these parts over. Now going back in, it's much easier to bolt the condenser back up to the radiator and then slide them in as an assembly. So we need to take the condenser and mount it onto the radiator. So I got the radiator upside down with the radiator hoses facing inwards, and now I'm going to mount the condenser to the back side of the radiator. And you just line up these little tabs here where the AC lines here are attached on the driver's side here. So we need to angle it under this little portion needs to angle under here, and this little catch has to sit perfectly on these little perches here. The back one will slide in the little catches in the back. So you'll do that for both sides. So this one will slide in the little catch in the rear, and this one will mount onto the tab here, and then we can bolt those up. Once we get those bolted up, then there's a little screw right here that mounted the flange here that holds it secure to the radiator. So once we get this all bolted up, it's going to look like this here. So the back is going to be slid into the tab, the front's going to be secured, the flange is going to be secured to the radiator with the bolt right here. And then on the opposite side here, it's going to have the one screw in the top there, and then slid under the little catch here. Now that you got that done, you can go ahead and put all the moldings on, and make sure that you go ahead and clip these in there. Now that we got the radiator and condenser assembled together with all of its hardware on it, we're going to install it back into the car. So we need to get this cooler here. We need to get it pushed inwards, and we need it also pushed over towards the driver's side. You're going to push all the hoses and lines and bottles over here. Get it pushed over as far as you can, and then we'll lower the radiator down into position. I grabbed a helper to help me kind of push all the hoses and lines and stuff and hold everything out of the way as I lowered the radiator down into position. So as I lower it down, I kind of go in real small increments, maybe a 1/4 inch down on the left, and then go over to the right, and kind of work your way back and forth. I also have the top of the radiator angled in towards the engine as I'm going down and in. So this whole process takes a couple minutes to do it. It's just take your time pushing your hoses and lines and stuff out of your way as you work the radiator down into position. So as I was lowering this radiator down into position, what I did was I had to get the ear on the passenger side here to go underneath the little frame here, so I had to get it to go under first. So I angled it in, slid it under it, and then slid it to the passenger side, and then I dropped the driver side here down while my helper pushed all the hoses and lines and bottles out of the way, and then dropped it down and slid it into position. Now you can go ahead and take the two mounting bolts that were mounted down here in the bottom of the ears, go ahead and secure those and tighten those down. And then you can take the mounting pins and slide them back through the radiator here. So you'll just line them up, just slide them through, and then push them until they lock into place. You'll do that on the left and right side. Since I was already down here, it was easy for me to go ahead and install the lower radiator hose. I went ahead and installed that and put the clamp on it. After that, I reattached the lower cooler line here, and then we're going to do the upper cooler line, and we're going to make sure that the coolant reservoir bottle is remounted and the power steering reservoir is remounted also. Hooking the reservoir back up, there's a little hook on the back that it has to hook on the core support, and then you bolt the two bolts up. Now we're going to take the cooler line here and mount it back into the little plastic hooks on the driver's side here. So you'll clip it in there below, and once you get those clipped in right here, to get the cooler lines to go in, I had to use my fingers to pry it in there. And then after that, we're going to put this bracket on the front so it slides over the hose. So it slides over like this, over the cooler hoses here. And then once it's slid over, then you can just line it up with the tabs on the radiator and push it in until it locks into place. Now this is secure. Now we can go ahead and put the AC condenser lines back up, bolt those up. I recommend you change out the O-rings with new O-rings. Usually they come with a new condenser. So change out those O-rings and bolt those lines up. And then make sure that everything here is all secure the way it was originally removed. Now we're going to take the lower fan shroud here and we're going to slide it down into place. So it has these little catches at the bottoms down there that it's going to catch on. And then so we slide it into place and make sure it catches the tabs. Now we can take the fan, condenser fan here, and screw it onto the water pump. It's reverse thread, so you're going to go clockwise to get it to tighten up. So you'll tighten those up, then you'll reconnect the electrical connector on the fan shroud, put the upper fan shroud into place so it just lines up, and these little clips at the bottom, so you'll clip it together. And then at the top, it'll clip on the top of the core support, and then you can put the upper hose on, resecure that clamp. After that, we're going to take the vent hose, put the vent line on, resecure the clamp, attach it to the bottle here, and make sure it's mounted onto the fan shroud. Resecure any of the plastic moldings on the front of the condenser. Now we're going to put the grill back in, so you'll line the grill tabs up. So the bottom will clip on first, and then the top will clip on like this. Once you get this all clipped on together, now we can go back underneath here and resecure the lower shields. And after those are all secured, we can fill the vehicle up with coolant, and we're going to top it off all the way till it's full. Take out the vent screw here until all the air bleeds out of it. So coolant and air bubbles will come out, and you'll keep filling it up until only coolant comes out. Once that's done, you can resecure the bleeder screw here. Then you're going to remove a little bit of the coolant because it's an expansion tank. So you'll just fill it up or remove it until the coolant is at the proper level on the bottle. So you may do this a couple times to get the air bled out like this. After that, you can start the vehicle up, and then you can run the vehicle until the thermostat opens up, and then you can do the whole bleeding process a second time. And then you can have the freon charged to the proper charge. You can do that yourself or take it back to the shop that you had it done at. So we're going to make sure that you do not overfill this coolant bottle. There is a coolant level here. You want to make sure that you don't exceed that, because the coolant will expand once it gets hot at full operating temperature, and it may crack the bottle or the radiator or pop a hose off if you overfill it. So you want to make sure you bleed that air out and fill it up properly. So I will link up all the parts and tools that I use in this video in the description. That way, if you need to pick up any of those, you can find those there. So if you're interested in supporting the How to Automotive YouTube channel, the best way you can do that is by purchasing t-shirts, coffee mugs, and stickers. I will leave a link for this in the description of the video. I'm Brian Eslick from How to Automotive. I'd like to thank you guys for watching my videos, encourage you to subscribe, invite you to head over to the howtoautomotive.com website for more valuable videos like this.